So while a delayed game is absolutely the answer if a game needs more time, give it more time, there's kind of a bigger problem that I'm having with that lately, and you guys seem to resonate whenever bringing up some kind of bigger picture, very personal matters that you might relate with based off that Halo video. And this is kind of triggered. It's been on my mind for a while, but it's kind of triggered from this Jedi Survivor delay that was announced this morning. And if you're not into Jedi Survivors, doesn't matter for this video, don't worry. It's just the thing that kind of triggered this thought. And Respawn and EA and so on, they announced from the Star Wars Jedi team that they're pushing back Jedi Survivor by a modest 6 weeks, I think, which is good. That's a good thing, because at the end of the day, it makes a better game. And I don't have problems with delays from the developers. I think what's coming across now is how normal delays are. And this isn't speaking against, making a perfect game or whatever. This is speaking against the fact that delays are normal. And you'll get what I mean, or maybe you can guess what I mean by the end of that. And this is something that we get a lot. For Bethesda, Starfield, and Redfall, we have these letters that go on Twitter a lot. These just kind of, messages that developers put out for everybody saying, hey, we need more time to make this game great. And there's another one about Halo Infinite, way back, where it's like, hey, we decided to push this game from 2020 to 2021. Delays are great because you make a great game out of that. You make a better game out of that. But what if we never knew when the game was coming? What if that game never had a date? What if that game wasn't announced? There's kind of a neat example of this recently with Hi-Fi Rush. Hi-Fi Rush, the game that was shadow dropped during the Xbox Developer Direct. And that is a game from Tango Gameworks. We had no idea of its existence, other than if you're people like me that, listen to news and stuff, that it did get leaked beforehand, but it wasn't ever officially announced. So we had no expectations or hopes for it. They just announced the game, revealed it, and shadow dropped it all in the same day, which I don't think is gonna be a standard practice going forward, because that's 1 in 10,000 chance that happens. But what's really interesting about it doing that is how the results came out. Forspoken, a game that was, and I have another point here too that you can kind of see if you pay attention to the visuals, you'll see, but Forspoken was a PlayStation exclusive game that was promoted for the past, year and a half, 2 years, something like that. And a game that looked all right and never caught my personal interest, but big Square Enix exclusive, cool. And it didn't do too hot. And yes, that has to do with kind of the quality of the game. And on screen here, this is from Jan, who, does great content, but this is just his thumbnail. And, you see from the user scores, not critic scores, user scores, you see a 3.6 versus a 9.1 for a game that was marketed for more than a year versus a game that was just shadow announced and dropped on the same day, getting a 9.1. There's also the sales of it, freaking they released in the same week, where Hi-Fi Rush somehow managed to outperform Forspoken on Steam. Now, a lot of people are latching onto this, when in reality what this probably means is that we don't see the pre-orders for Forspoken. We don't. So I don't like when people carry something way too out of hand and make it a whole console war thing, because we're most likely not seeing the fact that Forspoken probably got a lot of pre-orders or, sales before Hi-Fi Rush came in, and that's a thing. But nonetheless, to even see it in the competition of Forspoken when it's half the price of the game on a platform, that's wild. Now, to bring it back to the point, game delays are such a regular thing now. And there's nothing wrong with delaying a game if the developer needs more time. But I say again, what if it was not delayed? What if Starfield didn't announce its release date around a year beforehand? I can't remember when that release date came out. What if games just got their release date announced when it was like 90% confident that's when it's going to be? It's never going to be 100%. I'm currently reading this book called Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, not sponsored, not plugged in or anything. It's just a good book. It's a good read. And I'm learning about like how various games got made, you know, like the struggles that they had to deal with financially, development, technology, teams, direction, all this stuff. It's tough to make a game. And it's really cool. If you want to learn more about it, then, you know, I don't have an affiliate link. I probably should have one to help support the channel, but like, it's a great book. And in the book, it's really interesting to learn about like how the final phases of a game is really when it all comes together. Like that's when it comes together. When a team is in the final phase of a game, that's when everything comes together. And that's when they're starting to like, you know, polish out the bugs, make sure everything's working or whatever, make sure any last minute ideas get polished in time or figure out like, you know, they've had to cut a lot of content out, so they're balancing it out. A lot of stuff happens in the last part of the game. And that's why a lot of people might be wondering, you know, how come in that Xbox Developer Direct, Forza Motorsport, which was promised to be in the first half of the year, hell, even spring, we had a sort of more specific window, spring of 2023. It could still be in there, but we didn't get a date. And there was a report, or not even a report, it's from the developers' mouths saying, yeah, early 2023, we're going to be in the polishing phase of that game. We're going to be in the last part of it. And because of that, they don't have a definitive date. But that's kind of nice. And you know who does this method super duper well? Is freaking Nintendo. They are like the only publisher I know that announces a game and they have the release window within the next few months to year. Not all games, but a lot of them. And that's just because they somehow keep all their stuff on the wraps. They keep all their projects on the wrap and don't announce anything until that time comes. Nintendo's got this down packed. Like even one of my most anticipated games of all time, Pikmin 4, they announced that game for the first time in just recent months, you know? And when they announced it, they said it's a 2023 game. And this is a game that we've subtly maybe known about, might be in development for many years, but they didn't officially announce it until they had a release window. And that's what Nintendo does a lot with their games. They'll delay things, sure. That's happened with Breath of the Wild, with Animal Crossing. Those kind of things have happened. But Nintendo somehow manages to just announce their games when they are in that final phase, when they're in that polishing phase. And that is the time to give those release dates. You can market the game, sure. But can you imagine a world where, I get it, there's the boards, there's the shares and whatnot. You have to satisfy those people by having projections, having projected releases that are going to determine your stock value. That's a thing. But can you imagine a world where Xbox did not have to announce that Halo Infinite was going to be released alongside their next-gen console? Or that they had to delay the game by a year, and for people to say, can you imagine if they released that in 2020? Like, all those things. Can you imagine being in a world where developers and publishers, for that matter, just announce their release windows when they believe it'll be good, and they only announce it when they are in that final phase? That would take away a lot of anticipation. That would take a lot of hype, you know, because it's nice to look forward to a date far away from advance. But you know what? I think I prefer the latter, where I think I prefer the other method where we don't know until maybe even within 3 months of the game coming out. What do you think? It's just kind of a deeper issue that I think will be a really neat change. And I think Hi-Fi Rush was a good example of that. And again, you know, game development's hard. I'm not saying delaying games are bad. I'm saying the fact that it's titled a delay is bad. So, just kind of an interesting issue. Let me know what you think the solution is for games in the future, and if you're excited about, game delays. Game delays are great, but just like what's the way that we could potentially counter that if the industry, or is there ever a counter to that? Is there just no changing how delays work and having to announce release dates? Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and subscribe if you want more gaming speculation.